Bibliosophie.
Hello, beautiful people. I haven't come to you from this particular weird planty vantage point in a while, so I figured I would bring it back for nostalgia's sake. It is Tuesday right now. I did not have the courage to sit in front of camera yesterday, but this is the beginning of another weekly vlog. Why did I not have the courage? Because I was tired. I slept very, very poorly between Sunday and yesterday morning, and it just gives a very surrealistic sheen to the day. I've been stressed. I alluded in my previous vlog to the fact that I'm behind on a bunch of emails and kind of logistical businesses, and that's been kind of closing in on me. So yesterday was a little bit of triage of that, and I feel better as a result. I did final revisions for an article that's been weighing on me for a very long time, and so that's been sent off for submission. That's good. There was an eclipse yesterday. Did you hear about it? That was, magical. It's not a hot take, but it was a momentous event. New York City did not have full coverage, total coverage, but still pretty damn close. And it was the first time I ever saw an eclipse of any kind, and it was great. It was also, in addition to just cool, really wonderful to be part of something larger than me. That is part of the appeal, and to be in New York and know that so many people are also looking at this thing. There's a kind of stoppage of time that happens for a while because not everybody, but a whole slice of the population is concerned with the same thing. It is actually pretty magical to think that countless other people, well, not countless, but numerous other people are thinking exactly the same thoughts as you, basically, at exactly the same time. It is a very community making thing, and for once it's not a disaster. So that was really special. My neighbors were also on the roof with me, and they didn't have eclipse glasses, so I was lending mine to them, and yeah, it was just nice. What other things do I have to tell you? I'm feeling pretty chuffed and proud of myself right now because I just did some very good work for the past hour or so, revising a writing sample for my dissertation. I'm going to send that off to my advisor. As I've mentioned before, I need to propose my dissertation topic, and so I'm kind of collecting the elements of that. I've been stressed about actually doing that work, but right now it feels good. We'll see. It's very much a cycle of, oh, this is super fun and it's gonna be easy because it's work, but it's fun work, and the panic of, oh my gosh, I need to do things. So right now I'm enjoying the happy lull of, oh, what I wrote is very interesting. Good job. I have 20 or so very interesting pages to show for myself. Yeah, I'm enjoying that. We're returning Briggs and Biggs. I felt that should be said. I have not talked about the long form again since, it's been 3 weeks or something. I was reading it and I was talking about it a couple of vlogs ago. I have not really made that much more progress on it, so I need to pick that back up at some point. I do intend to pick it up again and read it, but right now I'm gonna return it to the library. Here's a stress I haven't complained about in a little bit. I have so much music to learn. Beginning of May, end of April, beginning of May is going to be very, very busy gig-wise. So I've not been practicing enough for obvious reasons. I was sick and also busy. But back at it, baby. So what have I been reading and thinking about? This is going to be messy and I think, necessarily and probably frustratingly incomplete and imperfect, and that's just the nature of trying to talk about things that are very, very large and broad and important in only a few minutes. So this is just a little facet of what I've been thinking about. That's because I'm thinking about Patrick Radden Keefe's Say Nothing, and also simultaneously Christina Sharpe's Ordinary Notes, which I've just barely begun. I've read the first, little couple of millimeters, let's say, of this book. And both have, in similar and different ways, been making me think of history, legacy, archives, memory, storytelling, and complication. I'm thinking a lot of the phrase, "it's complicated." This is a phrase that is much vilified, or has been much vilified, especially recently, and for good cause, for good reason, because "it's complicated" is a way of establishing a hierarchy of who's allowed to speak. You're naive, you don't know enough, this is beyond your pay grade, it's complicated. Geopolitical matters are complicated. You shouldn't be having so many emotions about the existence and survival of people. It's complicated. It's also a way of just washing your hands of something. You don't have to comment on anything because it's complicated. It's a way of enacting status quo, of not allowing, of shutting down and shutting up change, because everything is too complicated to possibly fix. So with that vantage point, yes, "it's complicated" is also just damningly general, right? It's a way of keeping yourself at a distance of something. What is it? But also, things, especially when you get down to specific things, are extremely complicated. The other side of "it's complicated" is a sort of streamlined oversimplification of people and things and events, and that's also a fallacy, of course. I think most of us are able to recognize that "it's complicated" is used in different ways. And yes, actually, things are excruciatingly complicated. That is absolutely the premise of Patrick Radden Keefe's project with Say Nothing. We start with the crystallizing event is the kidnapping and disappearing of a woman in her own home, mother of 10, and the kind of subsequent inaction and silence about it. It's immediately presumed, probably correctly, that she has been abducted by the IRA, but the book is not really about her legacy as a victim. And I think some people have complicated feelings about that as well, but it serves as an instigating event to investigate the very prismatic nature of Northern Ireland, the Troubles, and complicities. And so as a result of that, we're not humanizing her. We don't really get into her life, at least at the beginning of this book. I've read probably 10-15% of this book, I think. He, after that introduction, starts talking about IRA or proto-IRA members. So we get their story. He is complicating the archive. He is complicating villains and victims. And that's because it is a very complicated legacy. People have different perspectives of what is righteous violence in any given case, and certainly, as if you know anything about the Troubles, you know that there are extremely complicated perspectives, narratives, or a complication, a nest of different narratives and perspectives on who is in the right, what is appropriate violence, who gets to commit appropriate violence and how. And I don't want to also commit a fallacy in trying to streamline every conflict to being the same, because there are different complications in different conflicts, atrocities, etc. But also there are kind of common points, commonalities, and that is a complication of perspectives and legacies. How we streamline legacy is something that Sharpe is really, really looking into. So she is trying to complicate the concept of the archive and legacy. In addition to the project of problematizing a legacy that is overly streamlined to think of, villains and the past, enslavement as in the past, and that doesn't really grapple with the ongoing felt experience and reality of racism. And there are elements to this which are also trying to separate out needless complication, which I find interesting. This is a series of notes. Some of them are shorter, some of them are longer, some of these are excerpts of things, quotations, letters, articles, some of them are essays, some of them are very, very long, some of them are very short. There are also photos. So it's a whole beautiful array of materials, right? Constructing an archive that is complicated and broad, and also very, very felt. Note 16 is a letter addressed to Christina Sharpe. You'll see that some aspects of it are redacted, people, places, specifics. Note 17 is a quote, unsent and unwritten, or unwritten and unsent response. It's not clear that note 17 is actually a response to 16, but at the very least, the way that it's positioned, it can be read as such. And note 16 is seeking to maybe rewrite history. It's a personal note to her from somebody in her past, from high school. It has, as part of it, I see my high school self as such a small part of what I am now, and I'm glad that I have rich life experiences. So the person who has written this is seeking to, I think, complicate and restructure what their relationship to Christina Sharpe was in high school. I assume this is a bad relationship in high school, probably for racist reasons that Christina Sharpe had. And it ends with the very hopeful, wishing you a wonderful day and hope our paths cross in the future. Sharpe's response, even if it does not actually exist as part of the physical archive, but the response that she potentially wanted to have and the response that she is now giving us in this book, is much shorter, and a lot of it is redacted. Dear redacted, so much rehabilitated and reconstructed into that goodness and perpetual innocence that whiteness extends. Then redacted, 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 Christina Sharpe. That is short, and it is in many ways seeking to disavow a complication of her history with this person. If I'm reading note 17 as a response to note 16, she's shutting down a complication because it is a complication that serves an agenda that is complicit. It is an agenda that serves to extend probably racism and certainly ill action towards her. And so there, she is not complicating. She is not trying to thicken narrative. She's kind of shutting it down. And so in that sense, some things are not complicated. They don't need to be complicated. There are just some bad actions that cause some very, very real reactions, some felt reactions that are completely truthful and appropriate. And I really like that further complication. I will have said the word complication so many times that as part of trying to avoid an overly streamlined legacy that serves the wrong agenda, again, what is wrong agenda, but I think you know what I mean, the agenda of white supremacy, there is also the streamlining out of this sort of white guilt. So despite a desire for complication and context, there is also not allowing complication and context to take up too much air. On the next page, there's a really great quotation that I'll share with you. The archive is meaningful in its context. It is not truth, it belongs to an entire social environment. And that is not a neutral thing. Social environment is not a neutral thing. I'm gonna close out here because I've talked a lot. I'm gonna send you over to Noir's channel. She recently was reading this and talking about it, and she has some really interesting things to say about Christina Sharpe's analysis of the use of children as imagery in historicized portrayals of slavery. Those are really interesting, and I also have been thinking a lot about this. I've been thinking a lot about this in terms of how we portray innocence, and for instance in Gaza, why we are so prone to talking about the number of children who die, because part of that, of course, is the atrocity of exterminating a future, but it is also because we like to paint onto children an innocent and a lack of complexity, a lack of complication. There's so many more things that I could say about this book, and especially because I have barely started it. Hello, it's a few hours later. Yes, I have changed. I change a lot throughout the day, and I was actually thinking about it. I think it's because I want different chapters for different parts of my day. Days feel really long to me, and usually they are because I'm doing a lot of different things. And I think it gives me a chance to start anew. So that's my self-reflection on that. I'm extremely unfocused today, and I was going to say I'm feeling overwhelmed and stressed and therefore unfocused. I don't think that's true. I'm just unfocused, and I'm actually feeling pretty chill about it. I'm just unfocused, and I am anxious, but I think I'm anxious because I'm unfocused and I feel like I need to do things, rather than what sometimes happens to me, which is that I am anxious and therefore I am unfocused. Maybe the two are in fact the same thing. They're certainly connected to one another, but that's some more self-reflection. I'm telling you this because I'm telling myself this, and also to give myself a list of tasks, because that tends to work out well, especially when I'm unfocused. I just got back from doing some basic groceries. I actually did a very bad job, but I needed to buy protein sources. At least I did that, and that's kind of all I bought. So I still don't really have very, very useful foodstuffs in my home. So it goes. It's a little bit better now. I'm going to practice again. Then I am going to do a little bit of cleaning up, tidying of things for a little bit, take a little break, maybe practice a tiny bit more if I have time, and then I'm going to head over to a rehearsal. That is the plan for the rest of the afternoon. Okay. Pow, pow, pow! I want to talk about some fiction because that's also in my life. At the end of last week's vlog, I was reading Alfred Hayes' My Face for the World to See, and I said that I wasn't going to talk about it then, so I'm going to talk about it now. This was a very fast read, it's very short, and it's also very, very compelling and engrossing, very darkly engrossing. We'll come back to that in a second. I picked this up because both Pato and Renee, the left-handed reader, they had videos a couple months ago mentioning Alfred Hayes, so I was intrigued. This is very noir Hollywood mid-century vibes. It's the story of an Alfred Hayes type, a writer, a New York-based writer who's in LA for an extended stay, doing some screenwriting, which is also what Hayes himself did. He meets a young woman who is drunkenly walking into the ocean, and he saves her at the very beginning of the book, and that starts their relationship, which goes down some dark paths. It's a really kind of itchy reading experience. I'm not going to tell you much more about the plot. There also isn't that much more plot in some ways. It's just really uncomfortable. A lot of things about kind of unreliable narration and point of view from our main protagonist narrator, but also from the young woman herself and how she perceives her life, or how she is perceived. My Face for the World to See, I think, comes into that, and how she is seen by people, what role she plays, but in general, what roles we play in relationships or situationships, in careers. So there's something very, very unsettling about this book that I actually haven't completely managed to articulate for myself. Yes, there's a slightly surrealistic tinge to this in a very noir-ish way, and some kind of confusing shifts. So I do recommend it. This was a really good, slightly depressing actually in some ways, reading experience, but quite compelling, and compelling enough that when I was at the library on Tuesday, I picked up 2 more books by Alfred Hayes, which kind of form a trilogy, I believe, of following the same kind of auto-fictional character. I have heard mention of In Love also, but I didn't know The End of Me. I believe The End of Me is kind of the last of the trilogy. In Love is another super short one, so I'm probably going to read it quite soon. I don't know if I'm going to read all 3 of these, or the remaining 2, but I do think I'll at least read In Love pretty soon. The novel I'm currently reading this week is Great Expectations by Vinson Cunningham. This was sent to me by Hogarth a few weeks ago with a delightful cap that a lot of other people received and were enthusiastic about as a good mailer. This is, as you can probably guess, a Dickens spin-off, Dickens trope type thing. It's a coming-of-age novel, maturing novel that kind of plays off of Great Expectations by Dickens. We're following a young Black man named David who lives in New York as he starts to work for the primary and then presidential campaign of somebody who's just called the Senator. This is a charismatic, younger Black man who is really the hope for the party. So very, very much an Obama figure. And in fact, Vinson Cunningham worked as a staffer for Obama. So he's definitely drawing on that experience, I would assume. This is full of a cast of characters. We're seeing David as he interacts with this broad array of people, dealing with money, dealing with people in power. So he's learning about money and power and politics. So we meet a whole bunch of characters, some of whom are coming back and some of them are not really. It's more vignettes. This is very, very well written. I like Vinson Cunningham. He's a New Yorker writer and I like his writing. But it's also not tremendously interesting. The story is not, to me, supremely interesting. So it's a good read. It's worth reading and it's easy to read because it is very well constructed, but the actual kind of plot content, I'm not, exhilarated by, and that's fine. I'm definitely going to finish it because I'm having a good time reading it and I think it's worth reading, but it's also not captivating me fully. Yeah, exactly. There are bubbles flying in front of me from outside, and it's really delightful. Obviously, there are some, I assume, children outside downstairs who are playing with bubbles, and they're just flying high. So that's my update on that.